Yo, party people, February 2nd, number 2. We're in Hosea chapter 8. So, just going to show you real quick. If you have not seen the previous video, please go back and watch the first video because there's a lot of great information on chapter 8. We've only got through the first 5 verses in the first video. I'm going to see how far I can get here. So this is, if you haven't seen my videos, this is the nation of Israel on a timeline. And here's little Hosea. This is who we're studying. So he's preaching to the northern kingdom right before the fall of the northern kingdom to the kingdom of Assyria. These guys are the 10 tribes that went to the north. These are the 2 legitimate tribes of kings down here. These are called the kings of Judah. These guys are called the kings of Israel. Also, you see them mentioned called Ephraim because Ephraim was one of the 10 tribes that went to the north and it was the predominant tribe. So there you see them referred to as both. So in chapter 8, God is not playing. God has had enough, and Hosea is laying into them. So we've gotten through to chapter 8, verse 5. So now I'm going to start with verse 6. For from Israel is even this, a workman made it, and it is not God, but the calf of Samaria shall be broken to pieces. So here what he's saying is they're continuing to worship these false idols up there. Someone made their God. It's not something that they should be worshiping. They know better. They have a covenant with God, and he's claiming that they're going to be trying to claim that covenant in the midst of the siege, and God's going to be like, I don't know you. You've walked away from me a long time ago, homie. And so now he's declaring that these gods that they're worshiping are something that a workman has made and that it's going to be destroyed. So verse 7 says, now this is God. So far in the entire all of chapter 8, God is speaking. It's in parentheses, right? They sow the wind and reap the whirlwind. The stalk has no bud. It shall never produce meal. If it should produce, aliens would swallow it up. So here they're saying they sow that. We've all heard this. We've sowed the wind and we reap the whirlwind. So they are just constantly churning, going from Assyria to Egypt, looking for someone to protect them, someone to make an alliance with and make money off of. So there was financial incentive as well to make these treaties, and but they're not doing what God has called them to do. So when they're doing these things, what the result is going to be way worse than even the original sin, right? They're going to reap the whirlwind. And then it says they're not even going to be able to, anything that they think that they're going to produce is not going to produce. And anything that is produced is going to be taken over by people from other countries. So verse 8 says, Israel is swallowed up. Now they are among the Gentiles, like a vessel in which is no pleasure. So that's definitely representing them coming under siege and being overtaken. Verse 9, for they have gone up to Assyria like a wild donkey alone by itself. Ephraim has hired lovers. So Ephraim, again, remember, is referring to the northern kingdom, just another name for the northern kingdom. So he's saying they have gone up to Assyria. So they're going to the enemy like a wild donkey alone by itself. So they described, so then the commentary went into detail about donkeys, about how they were so stubborn and moody, and that they would often go out on their own, away from the pack. So here he's saying that they're being just like a donkey, right? They're not under God's shelter. They're just doing their own thing, doing whatever they want to do, not seeking God's guidance. And of course, seeking protection from nations that are their enemies as opposed to protection from God, right? Protection by God. And it's gotten to the point where God describes them as lovers, right? So it's very intimate and perverted, right? Their relationship with these other kingdoms, and again, it's like an affair, right? They're leaving God to go to Assyria and Egypt to try and seek these alliances instead of being the bride of God, right? Being God's lover. They're being the lovers of these other nations. So then it says, verse 10, yes, though they have hired among the nations, now I will gather them, and they shall sorrow a little because of the burden of the king of princes. So what he's saying there is that he's just continuing to describe they're going to other nations to seek protection, and that they shall sorrow because it's going to cost them, right? It's going to cost them even before they're invaded. The tribute that's going to be required, that's going to continue to increase as they become more poverty-stricken and more, different little invasions that begin to take place. The kings that they made these alliances with are still going to demand their tribute, right? So it's going to, instead of it being a positive thing, like they're thinking that they're going to have the upper hand, they're going to continually grow poorer and poorer until they're completely taken over. Verse 11, because Ephraim has made many altars for sin, they have become for him altars for sinning. So again, that's the false worship. There's also a play on words there with the original language. Verse 12, I have written for him the great things of my law, but they were considered a strange thing. Now for me, that's one of the saddest verses of this entire book. That God says, I have written for him the great things of my law, but they were considered a strange thing. So they are so perverted right now that the things of God, and this reminds me of America right now. This, I mean, there's so much that we can see here that applies to current day situations and thinking patterns and behaviors. But it's so true. I mean, God has given us his law and his ordinances and his ways of living, and they're considered strange things. They're not even, people don't even think like that sometimes anymore. You know, I work with a lot of kids and I see that. There's a lot of lack of completely unknown understanding of the Bible and God's ways of thinking and doing things. It's just absolutely tragic. Verse 13 says, for the sacrifices of my offerings, they sacrifice flesh and eat it, but the Lord does not accept them. So again, he's describing they are going through the motions and doing these things, but the commentary made a point of saying not only are they doing them for show, but they're also doing them because that's when they get to eat the meat. So they go to do these sacrifices, and the entire reason they're going is to participate in the, you know, the after effects, not in what it's all about, right? And so God's saying, of course, he's not accepting anything that they're doing. Now he will remember their iniquity and punish their sins. They shall return to Egypt. So here, of course, whenever you see Egypt, it's referring back to captivity, right? What is a possibility that they could have gone into captivity to Egypt? Absolutely, because that's one of the people that they were trying to do alliances with. But in fact, we know that it was Assyria that took them over. But Egypt, whenever you see Egypt mentioned, it's always referring back to when they were in captivity and God, out of his grace, pulled them out, right? And brought them to the promised land. So it's a reference to all of the things that they should be honoring God for and excited about. And they're here in the land because of God, you know, and it's all lost. So verse 14 says, for Israel, and here it says this, for Israel has forgotten his maker and has built temples. Now he's mentioning Judah, so he's referring to the southern kingdom right now. So first it says, for Israel has forgotten his maker and has built temples. Judah also has multiplied fortified cities, but I will send fire upon his cities, and it shall devour his palaces. So that is the end of chapter 8. So when it says, I will devour his palaces, that's when he's talking about Judah, palaces is referring to their houses, right? Their great houses that they have built. So Judah is following right behind Israel. And so every now and then you're seeing him call out Judah, because Judah, although that's the Davidic line, that's the line that Jesus has his ancestry from, at the same time, they are beginning to walk in the same apostasy that the northern kingdom had been doing and is doing. And so when it says the palaces, that again, you're seeing the beginning of the corruption of the society, just like the northern kingdom society was completely corrupted. And we saw in Amos how I mentioned this a lot of these videos, how the women were not content to drink wine out of cups. They had to have them in bowls, right? They were the extravagance was just so extreme, and it was all done through corruption. It wasn't done through legitimately gained wealth. It was gained on the backs of the poor by perverting justice and changing laws so that they could take things that were not theirs. So you're starting to see that this was happening in the southern kingdom as well, which we know results in the fall of the southern kingdom also eventually. Okay, so there we have it. Chapter 8, a little intense, but it's always a good heart check, right? So anyways, remember, there's no way to the Father but through Jesus Christ. If you don't know who Jesus Christ is, I encourage you to pick up a Bible, get a Bible somewhere, and read the words in red, because those are his words. All you have to do is say, Jesus, I give you my life. You don't have to understand everything. No one understands everything, and you're in. And just begin to seek him. He will never leave you nor forsake you. So all you have to do is just give him your life. You cannot lose your salvation, and just begin to seek him. All right? It's the only way to the Father. You can't get to heaven without him, and there is a hell, and there is an enemy called Lucifer. So anyways, that's all I had for you. Jesus is coming. Read your Bible. Peace. See you tomorrow.